Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness and another episode of Meta Plot Monday. And I have decided to cover a specific meta plot today, and that is the Giovanni. The Giovanni meta plot is all over the damn place, and it actually goes back a lot further than a lot of people understand. I think the Giovanni became most prevalent when you start looking at the Giovanni Chronicles, which take place in 1444 at the beginning. But they go so much further than that. They actually stretch back before ancient Rome. And their place in the world of darkness, just corrupted vampire in general. Like, completely in general. And, it's something that I want to go over in great detail, where they are. So today, we are going to have a necromancer TLDR as far as the world of darkness with the Giovanni are concerned. And I think the best place to actually start off of that is going to the very beginning. And that is the fact that the Giovanni started off as a merchant family known as the Giovannis, or the Giovianus. That is later anglicized into the Giovians, and that was that necromantic family, this merchant family, I should say, who did practice a now, I don't know if it would be considered dead art, but they practice a type of magic known as necromancy, and necromancy straight out just means black magic, which had a lot to do with ancestor worship and controlling the dead, which kind of held them. Ancestor worship was very common among the Roman Empire, so that kind of thing wasn't really that unheard of, but they found right ways to do it. And a lot of people don't quite get, at least a lot of people that I've met and that I've spoken to, don't quite get that the Cappadocians, where they were obsessed with the idea of death and what comes after, in the process of, actually, they had a handle on the physical process. They had, at this point in time, when the Giovanni or the Jovians were a small merchant family that were not part of that clan yet, when they were still human, they dealt more with the idea of the process of decomposition, even the creation of zombies and risen creatures. I can't even really call them zombies because they were more just animate dead, created by the use of Cappadocious blood, using their, now in 5th edition we'd say, Oblivion powered blood. But they didn't have pretty much any control or access to the spiritual part of death, such as wraiths and things like that, where this necromancy, which would later help spurn the paths of necromancy, specifically the sepulture path. And the sepulture path is what the Giovanni were actually chosen in for, the ability to be able to control the restless dead. And the bringing in of the eventually known as the Giovanni family, which we'll just go ahead and call them Giovanni from now on, even though that name did not get anglicized until much, much later. I believe it was actually in the 13th century when it was the Giovanni family, and it was actually just Giovani. And then that extra N was brought in during the 15th century. We'll just go ahead and call them Giovanni just so it's a lot easier on that one. But all the clans wanted the Giovanni, all of them. In, I think it was 1005, the year 1005, Cappadocius brought in Augustus into the family, and he didn't even truly embrace him. His two childer, Japheth, and his female childer Constantia, which we see running rampant in the cult of the blood gods storyline, Sticks and Bones. Constantia, the child of Cappadocius, is that risen that gets up and tear asses around the town. They use Cappadocius's blood to embrace Augustus, and they actually don't use all of it. They don't use all of the blood that Cappadocius ordered them to take for the embrace of Giovanni. In fact, if you stop and think about it, Augustus's sire was torpid during the embrace, which his other childer, Japheth and Constantia, were against the idea of bringing this in. But if you ever hear anybody talk about the true vessel, as they call it, or the final vessel, I've also heard it called, that is the vial, that is the container which holds the last of the blood that was used to embrace Augustus Giovanni. And that right there is going to become a major plot point as time goes by, over the course of time. Because in the Dark Ages, Clan Cappadocian, the Clan of Death, it ends up going under a very interesting, very interesting political pool, because Augustus himself was privy to a lot of information that a lot of the Cappadocians were not. And at one point in time, Cappadocius had decided that he was going to ask his childer what they had learned, or what they were in the process of learning. And the interesting thing about that is those who did not give him an answer that they wanted ended up getting put inside of an underground city called Hecata, which had a curse on it stating that no vampire could leave the city and no human could enter. And there's a lot of different theories about who came from that. The Harbingers of Skulls probably came from that. But there's a lot of different thoughts on how they may have survived. Kamakali actually comes up later on in a lot of Beckett's work and things that he had done studying this, not being able to really safely go in, but still wanting to study the things. Now, the young ones, the Giovanni as they are called, they're a very prosperous Venetian trading family who has money everywhere and necromantic skill, which they use to give themselves an edge when it comes to the business that they do. They're using their family wraiths to spy on everybody and to get information about business and to get a leg up, and they really got all of their money based on necromantic practices. The Cappadocians found that incredibly attractive and provided the lowest generations, making it a very mutable clan. Being able to not just go, oh, this is a new bloodline, or this is just an extension of the Cappadocian clans, but being able to be that close and embraced by Cappadocius himself. Augustus was able to crown himself king of the hill when it came to the Cappadocians, which is why you see a huge change in the clan symbol as time goes by, where it was originally, I'll just go ahead and put it up here, changes from this and then into this, where it's like lording over the dead. And that was the Giovanni clan symbol at around 1243. The Giovanni bloodline had already started to establish itself as more important in the 1200s, 200 years before the purging of the Cappadocians even happened. They ain't getting away with it because of the power that they had and the fact that Cappadocius didn't really want to do anything about it because he had his own plans, which were the apotheosis plans. And this is where you get this interesting who was in the right, who was in the wrong situation. In 1444, the plans came to fruition, and Augustus Giovanni's child, Claudius, formed a conspiracy to diablerize Japheth. This right here was actually a distraction because there was a newly formed haughty elder coterie around. And when I say coterie, I mean 7 people who are running around claiming to be important when they really were not. And that coterie, known as the Little Room, translating to the Camarilla, was run by Hardestat and a few friends of his. This is Hardestat the Elder, not Hardestat the Younger, who took over for him after his diablerie by Tyler during the Anarch Revolt. This actually is one of the biggest issues that I have with the Camarilla, and that is the complete and utter hypocrisy that the Camarilla has for nearly 500 years denounced the concept that the Antediluvians existed, when the whole point of the Camarilla's foundation, what actually gave them the upper hand in becoming the world power that they are in the modern Knights, is that they formed to completely just stop the idea of elders such as Antediluvians being diablerized. Because like I was saying, the conspiracy of Isaac, which was this interesting little almost like Camarilla anti-tribu. It was a group of each of the clans, each members of the clan, some of them actually being connected to members of the forming Camarilla, had gathered together to, like I said, diablerize Japheth, who is the child of Cappadocius, this being a distraction so that Augustus himself could diablerize Cappadocius. And that whole plan just kind of, I don't know, some people say it succeeded, some people say it failed, but it really depends on who you ask what the actual goal was. Because where the Camarilla did come in and trash the conspiracy of Isaac, you still have the situation where Cappadocius killed, if not diablerized, because that's debatable depending on how you want your canon for your story to go. Cappadocius was murdered by Augustus. Now, in the actual canon of the game, I believe that his soul escaped and shot across the Shadowlands, going to its true vessel, which was that container where his blood was in, that was taken for the embrace of Augustus Giovanni, basically making him a wraith stuck in the Shadowlands, bound to a single fetter that is his blood. But why did Augustus want to diablerize? Was he trying to become the new Antediluvian? Does that matter? Does being a third generation truly matter when it comes to being in charge of your clan? Obviously, the past 500 years has proved no. Because Augustus Giovanni has run one of the most uninterrupted, successful clans in Kindred history. This also led, however, to one of the bloodlines of the Cappadocians cursing the Giovanni with the kiss of the Lamia, or the bite. And that is why the Giovanni do not look like corpses like the Cappadocians, and they suffer from what's now the Hecata clan bane, where their kiss does not cause pleasure, but it causes excruciating agony in its victims. So a lot of Giovanni became extortionists, consensualists, grave robbers, and baggers, if you want to look at predator types. And for some reason, within the past couple of years, when the Hecata joined together, the family reunion and all that, they all decided that the Giovanni did well enough over the past 500 years with that curse that it did not hinder them from what they were trying to do. They still climbed to the top of political ladders left and right, everything that they were trying to do, completely staying away from the Camarilla, the Sabbat, and the Anarchs. So why not go with that too? And now, all of the clan banes of all the bloodlines and things like that have now gone away. The rock tempers of the Puttanesca, the rotting contestants of the Zameti, the pallid look of the, I believe it was called Ghastly of 3, that the Harbingers of Skull had, and even the need to eat flesh of the Nagaraja has completely gone away. They don't need to do that anymore, and they've replaced that with the bite of the Lamia, the kiss of the Lamia. And I don't think that it's really changed them much soever. But why? Again, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the damn place when it comes to this, but why exactly was Augustus trying to kill Cappadocius? Was it because he was trying to take over the clan, which he ultimately did, and up until recently was going very well? Or was he trying to stop Cappadocius from fulfilling the apotheosis that he was attempting to do, which was to locate God, diablerize him, and take the powers of God for himself, to destroy the boundary between the lands of the dead and the lands of the living? That sounds very familiar for those of us who have been following along the Giovanni, because the Giovanni were attempting to do the same thing. The idea of building a spirit bomb to destroy the Shroud. I think it was a mix of both. I don't think that he wanted Cappadocius to successfully destroy the border between the lands of the living in the lands of the dead, because he would have been unstoppable at that point. He would have had all of the wraiths at his beck and call to do the jobs that he wanted them to do. And Giovanni himself wanted it for that. Now, how did Giovanni get away with that? A political favor. Probably due to the money and the resources and everything that the Giovanni bloodline, which has now destroyed the founder, Augustus has become the new clan leader, and they've started to wipe the Cappadocians off the map, who were unsightly. Clans such as the Cappadocians and the Gangrel and the Nosferatu are easy to sweep under the rug when you're looking at the fact that they can't blend in. And with this newly manufactured masquerade in place, the Cappadocians not practicing obfuscate does make it a little tricky for them to get along with humans. So the Camarilla put in a new order, a deal with the Giovanni known as the Promise of 1528, where the Giovanni were left alone and the Camarilla left them alone, exactly how the Giovanni wanted it. They were able to concentrate on their own stuff. Now, in V5, we come to find out that there was a 500-year stall on this, and I don't really understand why. I can see it being like they're asking for some type of head start to try to get through this, but I don't know. From 1528. After that, the Giovanni were basically left alone to pursue their own goals. And by opting out of the Camarilla and Sabbat wars, they were able to devote to their own personal goals, which are going to be increasing their necromantic knowledge, acquiring additional financial abilities to do what they want, and eliminating the remaining Cappadocians and Lamia. These goals were each tied to increase the soul supply that they had for engineering an economic disaster that would completely change the world. And if the Camarilla had known about this, they would not have taken this, because they were going to have the exact same ultimate goal that Cappadocius had in his original plan, but for Augustus taking the lead and not Cappadocius. Clan Giovanni acquired the bulk of its power by maintaining power over wraiths. That's something that Cappadocius could never quite accomplish. So, by tearing down, I want everybody to actually think about just old-fashioned Giovanni on this one, if you know about that. Giovanni did not practice fortitude. They did not practice auspex. The Giovanni practiced dominate, and potence. Auspex, fortitude, and mortis were the powers of the Cappadocians. Necromancy being a more spiritual version of mortis, because mortis was about mortis. It was about the human body's decomposition rates. Necromancy was more of a magic dedicated to controlling wraiths and making them do your bidding. Giovanni, practicing potence, could handle humans. Giovanni, practicing dominate, could handle humans and vampires, depending. Giovanni, practicing necromancy, allowed their temporal gifts on the Skinlands to take care of the stuff in the Shadowlands. So they would be the most suitable vampires to run both sides. Bringing up one of my favorite abandoned plot lines for Vampire the Masquerade of the Younger War. The idea that the younger vampire clans, the Bruja, the Tremere, and the Giovanni, were all fighting to see who was going to be ultimately in control of the world. And that was thrown to the side because it was just a plot line that was brought up in a novel that I had read, the Masquerade of the Dead, the Red Death trilogy. And I don't know, it was just something that really worked for me, and it makes a lot of sense. The idea that vampires who are younger are not going to have that much of a hard time transferring their mentality into new times. So they're trying to gain money, gain wraiths, and destroy their predecessors. So each of these goals are tied into either their eventual plan to tear down the shroud for necromantic knowledge and acquiring souls and stuff, and to basically keep anybody who knew the original plan for Cappadocius quiet, because they're the ones who could ruin the promise of 1528. That actually is kind of interesting when you look at the Harbingers of Skulls, who did not seem to really give a flying crap about the Giovanni when they came back. They were apparently Cappadocians. They had all the exact same weaknesses, benefits, and powers as the Cappadocians, except they now practiced necromancy along with a path called the Mortus path instead of Mortis. And their main enemies were the Camarilla. Their idea was to team up with the Sabbat, their main idea was to team up with the Sabbat and take out the Sabbat's enemies because they had a personal grudge against the Camarilla. And that was most likely that they did not, in their fledgling state, try to stick up for the fact that Cappadocius had just destroyed, at least seemingly destroyed, half of his clan by locking them into some underground city. Now, you do find another group pop up in the Victorian ages known as the Zemeti. And the Zemeti are these... Most people thought they were some type of Nosferatu. But from what the novels have taught me, and the novels that I'm talking about are the clan novels, the clan saga, the Fall of Atlanta storyline, is that they were surviving Cappadocians yet again, or at least one that had gotten to a new world, who's the idea that Cappadocians looked like the dead was taken to a far more deep level of that curse, where they're now starting to rot off. And the Zemeti had a whole new grudge against the Giovanni, and the Giovanni didn't even know why, because only the eldest of the Giovanni even knew anything about what was going on concerning the old days in the 1400s and the 1500s when they were trying to take out the other Cappadocians. So what were the Giovanni like in the Victorian ages? Well, this was the age of discovery and colonization, and they were gaining a whole bunch of new prospects in the United States. And they were able to really power through a lot of their merchant rivals due to the fact that they had necromancy, just as they had always done. But as trade got more and more important and wealth and influence became the heart of the nation of the United States, the Giovanni were able to accumulate large financial power and make themselves royalty in their own way. It's kind of hard to do that, however, when you're looking at just having one name. This is how dynasties are created, and dynasties are eventually attacked. And that's why the Giovanni started to spread out and find new individuals, such as in the 16th century, when the Giovanni were involved in Spanish expeditions throughout the world, and they found the Pizanob family, who were a group of Aztecs who had natural necromantic ritualistic talents. And they decided to slap a Mayan name on them because, white guys, they don't really care. And they're just trying to flesh out their family. I think the Pizanob might actually have been one of the first ones to ever come through. But during the two world wars, the plan of Augustus Giovanni was set back because of two maelstroms that happened due to the violence of the world. It was hard to take control of wraiths when they were going through their own worldwide panic on the other side of the shroud, because things don't stop in the Skinlands. So in the modern nights, here we go, it gets a little strange again, because it's all about money, and they have everything, and they're no longer working alone. They have new individuals. They've got the milliners. They've got the Della Passaglia, I think it's called, the Pisanobs, the Ghiberti. There are so many different families that are coming in, and seemingly they wiped out finally the last of the Cappadocians and the Lamia, their protectors, their bodyguards, and they were prepared to rend the shroud for themselves, bringing themselves up to a whole new power. But everything then goes bottom up, because a new mysterious cult of vampires that we had already mentioned had appeared within the Sabbat in the 20th century, called the Harbingers of Skull, who claimed vengeance of the clan for unknown reasons. These were obviously Cappadocians, like I had said, and they seemed to be attacking more the Camarilla than they were the Giovanni, though they did kind of take advantage as they could. And when finally the Sixth Great Maelstrom shredded Wraith Society, an apocalyptic event known as the Week of Nightmares happened, which completely just disturbed everybody. No, that was not just something that affected the Ravno, that affected the entire world of darkness, bringing us into what we affectionately known as the Final Nights. And the Final Nights, I don't know. The Giovanni began to wonder if they made a horrible mistake, because things were a lot more complicated on the Shadowlands than they had ever really started to think. Augustus Giovanni realized that he may have underestimated the other antediluvians, that thinking that maybe just because he had a younger view on things didn't mean that he was going to keep it. The fact that his clan was running high with the mortal society did not necessarily mean that he himself was going to be able to run things well. And maybe the dead would become more potent if the shroud were pulled down. That's true. They might be able to overpower the Giovanni as well. And then also maybe Cain was real and would not appreciate exactly what Augustus was doing. This is around the time where we also see a split in the plot line, depending on what you're going. If you're going on V20, then what you're dealing with is a new interesting thing, probably my favorite part of Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, which is the Independent Alliance, where the Sabbat had decided that it was just too much trouble to keep attacking the Camarilla and would start going after the Youngers instead. In this one, the Giovanni and the Setites became massive targets for the Sabbat. The Sword of Cain attacked with a vengeance. And in this storyline, the Giovanni broke the promise of 1528, signed agreements with the Setites, and created something that's known as the Independent Alliance, where these two groups got together and started to rule cities for themselves. I liked that storyline. I thought it was one of the better used But it also did completely change what those clans were trying to do, at least on the outside. On the inside, the Setites were still trying to raise Set, and the Giovanni were still trying to tear down the Shroud. In Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, it's gone a little bit differently. First off, the Setites have rebranded as the Ministry, and the Ministry are now the religious backbone of the Anarch movement. And the Giovanni themselves, bad things started happening to them. At one point in time, apparently Augustus Giovanni has been destroyed. Not really sure if that's 100% accurate, but it seems by all accounts to be true. Rumors flying around that either the Capuchin or the true Baron of the Zemeti himself took out Augustus. There's a lot of different thoughts on that. But with that, the Harbingers of Skulls, the Lamia, which apparently have either been recreated or survived the Purge, the Zemeti, the Nagaraja, the remaining Cappadocians, and the Giovanni have come together to create a new clan known as the Hecata. The idea that the name Hecata has been an overlapping name since the Dark Ages is there. But in this situation, the Giovanni are actually just a small bloodline who have lost the majority of their power within the Hecata due to the fact that the other families don't trust them. Because the Milliners, the Puttanesca, the Pisanob, the St. Johns, all of the Giovanni outer families who have not been treated with as much respect as the Giovanni gave to themselves, and possibly even the Rossellini, they have decided to step up and take their place and not be considered second-class citizens by the Giovanni. The younger Giovanni have survived due to the fact that they were not let in on Augustus Giovanni's main plan. And for some reason, instead of just purging the rest of the Giovanni, the remainders of the Hecata have decided that since they were ignorant, they don't deserve to die. And that's where we're standing right now. The organization of this whole new family is just so different than what we have. But the Giovanni are still there. They still have their odd little organizations inside, but they're not as tolerated because the Giovanni may be the face of the clan because they don't want the Hecata don't want the outsiders, the Camarilla and the Anarchs and all that, to know 100% what's going on. They're just the face at this point. The other families, the clan variants of Clan Giovanni, the Duncerns, which are Scottish bankers and cannibals, the Milliners, which are classic Americana financiers that were brought into the family in the 1950s, the Pisanobs, which are the Mexican necromancers, I'm never going to pronounce this one right, the Della Passaglia, which are Italians that focus on dealings in the Mideast, the Gibarte, which are another Italian family of necromancers who are active with interest in Africa, the Puttanesca, which are Sicilian thugs with nasty tempers, the Rossellini, who are accomplished, though forceful, necromancers. They consider themselves to be part of the main family as well. Those have all branched off, including the Baron, the Hidalgo, the Liwang, the Koenig, the St. John, the Rothsteins. Those are all now being considered equal standings because they're not Giovanni any longer. They're Hecata, and they're not being held under the boot of the Italian merchants who had aspirations of world domination, because all of those elder members have been removed. It actually makes me think of the Premesines, which is Cappadocians who supported the Giovanni during the Purge. Where do they fit in? Have they all been taken out? That really does seem like something that would be a very interesting plot line of if the Premesines were focused on supporting the Giovanni through the Purge because they did not trust Cappadocius. Were they in on Augustus Giovanni's main plan? Are they going to go through and be considered, I don't know, are they going to end up being considered something of a traitor to the clan? I mean, who knows? Who knows? The reason I decided to do a TLDR on Clan Giovanni, the Giovanni in general, not just the Hecata, was because my game is so focused on the Hecata right now. And there's so much interesting lore that has just gotten swept under the rug. And right now is the time where that can happen. Because it's a complicated family. They've been around longer than many of the other bloodlines out there. They've been around since Rome. And that's one of those things that time is going to cement them in. But the Giovanni aren't in charge anymore. Now it's more of the Cappadocians, the Harbingers, using the Giovanni name so that they can continue their work. What is their work now? What exactly is Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition going to do with this cohesive council of necromancers who have all come together? I'm very interested in that, and I can run my own little low world plot lines for myself and my troop and share them with you guys, which I really love doing. But I can't get it out of my head on what exactly they are going to do with them later. Where is this going to go? Are the Hecata truly immune to the beckoning as they seem to be? And if so, does that have anything to do with the fact that they don't have a third generation? Does that imply that the other clans still do? Are the Ravno suffering from the beckoning? Is another question I guess I could throw in there, but that's a story for a different day. Right now, we've got the dead and the clan of the dead to think about. I am Voivode Maquette, and thank you for joining me in this TLDR. I know it was a lot, and it was all over the place, but so are the Giovanni. They're a lot, and they're all over the place. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next one. Good evening.